10 years. Same one bedroom, same building, same slightly too loud radiator that kicks on every November like it's angry about something. You've renewed this lease 9 times. You know exactly which floorboard creaks outside apartment 4C. Somewhere in that same city, someone you graduated with bought a house the same year you signed your first lease here. Different mailbox, different mortgage statement, different Sunday mornings spent on yard work you don't have. Everyone assumes they know how this story ends. That they own something and you don't. That a decade of rent checks is a decade of money that just disappeared into someone else's pocket. Here's what a decade of your bank statements actually says, and it's not what anyone at your last family dinner assumed. There's a specific belief almost everyone carries into their late 20s, usually without ever examining it. The ownership assumption, the idea that owning a home is automatically the financially responsible choice, and renting long-term is automatically a kind of financial failure to launch. It's not that the assumption is baseless. Home equity is real, and for a lot of people, buying works out well. But the assumption skips a step that almost nobody actually calculates. What happened to the money the renter didn't spend on a down payment, closing costs, property taxes, maintenance, and a mortgage? That gap between renting and owning isn't zero. It's often hundreds of dollars a month. And what happens to that specific number, not whether someone rents or owns, but what they do with the difference, is the entire story that decade actually tells. Let's get specific, because the rent versus own comparison usually gets flattened into something much simpler than it actually is. A $340,000 house with 10% down means a $34,000 down payment before you've paid a single dollar of the actual mortgage. Add closing costs, typically 2 to 5% of the loan, and the number moves before move-in day to somewhere near $42,000 out of pocket. Then property taxes, homeowners insurance, and maintenance, conservatively 1 to 2% of the home's value a year. Add roughly $400 to $600 a month that a renter simply doesn't pay. Meanwhile, a comparable rental in the same neighborhood runs, let's say, $1,950 a month. That's a real gap, roughly $700 a month, sometimes more depending on the market, sitting there every single month for 10 years. Here's the mechanism almost nobody talks about. That $700 gap is the actual battlefield. If it gets invested consistently, renting can genuinely outperform owning over a decade, especially in expensive housing markets. If it gets absorbed into lifestyle instead, a nicer car, more takeout, upgraded everything because at least I'm not paying a mortgage, then renting quietly loses, not because renting is inherently worse, but because the gap got spent instead of grown. Rewind 10 years. You're 25, signing your first lease on this apartment, $1,450 a month back then. Everyone around you that year is talking about buying. A coworker puts an offer on a condo, your cousin closes on a starter home in the suburbs, and there's a specific kind of pressure that shows up at every family gathering, gently disguised as concern. You're just throwing money away renting, you know? You do the math anyway, sitting at this same kitchen table 10 years younger. A starter home in your area runs about $310,000. The down payment alone would take almost everything you've saved. And the monthly cost of owning, once you add taxes, insurance, and maintenance, comes out to roughly $2,300, about $850 more than your rent. You make a decision that year that doesn't feel dramatic at the time. You stay in the apartment and you set up an automatic transfer of that $850 difference, the exact gap dollar for dollar, into a brokerage account the same night your rent goes out every month. Your cousin closes on the starter home that same year. For a while, it looks like the obvious win. A real estate agent posts congratulations, there's a housewarming party, people talk about equity like it's a foregone conclusion. You go to the housewarming. You're happy for them. You also go home and keep making the transfer. 5 years in, your cousin refinances after a rate change and takes out $18,000 for a kitchen renovation, rolling it back into the mortgage. It's a reasonable, common decision. The kitchen genuinely needed it, but it resets years of equity progress in the process. That same year, your $850 a month transfer, running uninterrupted for 5 years with modest market growth, has become just under $63,000. Nobody at any family dinner asks about the second number, because nobody knows it exists. There's no photo to post of a brokerage statement. There's no housewarming party for a decade of automatic transfers. What a decade of renting on purpose actually buys. So what does 10 years of renting, done deliberately instead of by default, actually produce? Here's the honest version, benefits and trade-offs both. 1. The straightforward number. $850 a month invested consistently for 10 years at a conservative 7% average return becomes roughly $147,000. That's not guaranteed. Markets move, and this assumes discipline every single month. But it's the realistic outcome of the gap being invested rather than spent. 2. Total mobility, which has its own dollar value. 0 repair costs. 0 property tax bills. The freedom to take a job 2 states away with 60 days notice instead of needing to sell a house first. This one is easy to undervalue until you actually need it. 3. No maintenance risk absorbing a bad year. A homeowner's HVAC system failing can mean an unplanned $8,000 to $12,000 expense in a single month. A renter's HVAC failing is a phone call to a landlord. 10 years is long enough that something like this happens to almost every homeowner at least once. 4. The trade-offs that are real and worth naming honestly. No forced savings mechanism. A mortgage payment builds equity whether you're disciplined or not, while a rent payment builds nothing unless you separately choose to invest the difference every single month for a decade without skipping. This path requires consistent behavior a mortgage doesn't demand. It also means no fixed housing cost, rent increases with the market, while a fixed-rate mortgage payment mostly doesn't. And there's no home to eventually pass down, sell outright, or borrow against later in life the way home equity allows. 5. A less obvious cost. No physical proof. This is the part that's hardest to quantify and easiest to feel. A house is a thing you can walk through, renovate, point to. $147,000 in a brokerage account is a number on a screen that nobody, including sometimes you, experiences as tangible in the same way. The honest conclusion isn't renting wins. It's that the decision that actually determined the outcome was never rent versus own. It was what happened to the monthly gap between them every single month for 10 straight years. Here's what nobody warns you about choosing this path on purpose. It doesn't feel like winning for most of the decade, even when the numbers are working exactly as planned. At a holiday dinner in year 7, the conversation drifts to backsplash tile and a finished basement someone's working on. You have nothing to add. Not because you don't have opinions about tile, because you don't have a house to put it in, and the absence of that fact sits in the room a little even if nobody says it out loud. Someone, well-meaning, asks if you're still renting. In a tone that isn't unkind but isn't quite neutral either. You say yes. There's a small pause. The conversation moves on. But you feel it, the same specific ache from a decade of these exact conversations. Slightly different words each time, same shape. There is no version of, I've been investing the difference for 10 years, that competes with a finished basement at a dinner table. The number is real. The number is significant. The number also doesn't have a room you can walk someone through. In year 10, interest rates shift and home values in your metro dip roughly 6% over 18 months. Not a crash, just a correction. Your cousin, still 5 years from paying off the refinanced mortgage, watches the equity that took a decade to build shrink on paper by around $19,000 in a single year, tied entirely to a house they can't easily convert into anything else without selling and moving. That same year, a job opportunity opens up in another city, genuinely better role, 22% raise. Your cousin considers it and turns it down, partly because selling the house in a down market means realistically losing money on the sale after agent fees and the recent dip. You get a similar opportunity that same month. You give 60 days notice, use part of the $147,000 for a security deposit and moving costs in the new city, and the rest keeps compounding, untouched, in the background, exactly as it has for a decade. Nobody at either family's holiday dinner that year fully understands why one cousin moved for the opportunity and the other didn't. It wasn't ambition. It was 10 years of a monthly transfer nobody ever asked about. So if you're renting the same apartment year after year and feeling, some nights, like you're falling behind everyone whose name is on a mortgage, it's worth asking a more specific question than, should I be buying a house? The real question is, what's happening to the gap? If that difference between your rent and what a mortgage would cost is quietly funding a lifestyle instead of an account, then yes, the assumption at every family dinner is probably right about you specifically. But if it's been going somewhere every single month, unglamorously, without a renovation to show for it, then the decade did something for you that nobody at that dinner table can see and won't until the exact month you need it to show up. What's your gap actually doing right now? And would you even be able to answer that if someone asked?